As soon as my check hits my account, it doesn't go to no student loans, it doesn't go to no bills, it goes straight to my savings account and it goes to my investment account. Basically, I pay myself first and everyone else can get what's left. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sabrina Raynique, and on this channel we talk about personal finance, we talk about travel, we talk about lifestyle, and ultimately living a life that we love while planning for the life that we want. So today we're going to talk about if we should pay our student loans off early. And when I say early, I mean either putting extra payments towards your student loans or paying more than the minimum payment. You may be wondering, why is this even up for debate? Of course you should pay your student loans off early, but I just want to say not so fast. I understand that a lot of times we can be very anti-debt. You know, we've just seen so many people struggle with debt. It's like, oh, get away from me. I don't need you in my life. So kind of with that, we throw all of our cash, all of our money towards that debt without really thinking about if there's anywhere else our money could go, if we can get better returns elsewhere, make more money elsewhere. And that's what I really want to talk about today. I think the reason a lot of us are so anti-debt too is because it's so easy to get in and so hard to get out of. And not only that, it is so expensive. You can be paying debt for decades. You can be paying interest that's double the amount you borrowed. It can get really out of hand. Student debt, on the other hand, is very different from high interest debt because the interest rate is so low, so it doesn't cost you as much money to borrow it. So I want to talk about 4 things that you should be prioritizing before paying off your federal student loans. So let's get into it. One of the first things you want to think about before you decide to pay your loans off early is, do you have an emergency fund with 3 to 6 months worth of expenses? So this emergency fund of 3 to 6 months worth of your expenses, and I mean your bare minimum expenses, what do you need to survive? That's going to be really important, especially in the case of you maybe unexpectedly losing your job and no longer having an income. That emergency fund will give you 3 to 6 months to find a new job and to supplement your income. 58% of Americans don't even have $1,000 for an emergency. So that means if they were faced with an emergency, that they're going to have to resort to those expensive credit cards that we talked about before with upwards of 17% or so. And like I said before, having that debt is just so expensive. So if you're thinking about, should I save first? Should I pay my student loans off first? You should definitely save first until you get your emergency savings together. Once you're able to do that, then you can start putting extra payments towards your student loans. But the real reason you want to save is because you want to ensure that you don't have to default to those high interest credit cards and high interest loans that I talked about. By defaulting to those high interest credit cards and high interest loans, you can pay double the interest, which is crazy. But you're gonna end up paying way more interest on those loans than the interest you would save by paying your student debt early. Now, if you want to get your savings together quickly, I have a rule where I pay myself first. So that means as soon as my check hits my account, it doesn't go to no student loans, it doesn't go to no bills, it goes straight to my savings account and it goes to my investment accounts. So that way I know that even if I can't pay these other bills, I know that your girl is getting paid and setting myself up for the future. It doesn't have to be a whole lot either. You can literally start with $5 a month or $5 a week or something like that and work your way up. But just make sure that you are paying yourself first. Basically, I pay myself first and everyone else can get what's left. So the next thing you want to ask yourself before you decide to pay your student loans off early is, do you have other high interest debt? So high interest debt is going to be considered debt that has, I would say, 7% or so more in interest. And if you have high interest debt, including credit cards, including personal loans, you want to prioritize that first, period. I just want to reiterate that if you have high interest debt, you want to pay every single dollar of that high interest debt before you make any extra payments towards your student loans. The reason that I am kind of driving this home so much is because it is so expensive to borrow money when the interest rate is high. So if you have high interest debt, a lot of times you can pay twice as much as the amount you borrowed in just interest, or you can be paying this amount for decades, which is crazy. Now comparing that to a federal student loan, and that interest rate may be 4% or something like that, and it doesn't cost you nearly as much to borrow that money. So I'm going to give you a little example because I love examples and I feel like it really helps to paint the picture. So let's say you have $5,000 in credit card debt with a 17% interest rate and your minimum payment is $35. It's going to take you, wait for it, 22 years to pay that off if you just pay the minimum payment. And not only that, wait for it, you're going to pay $9,208.44 in just interest. That is freaking crazy. That's almost twice as much as you borrowed. So with that said, you're going to pay a total of, wait for it, $14,208.44. So you borrowed $5,000 and over the course of 22 years, you end up paying $14,208.44. And that is why it's so expensive to have high interest debt. Now, federal student loans are not like that at all because the interest rate is typically so much lower. So it doesn't cost you that much money to borrow it compared to traditional credit cards or traditional personal loans. So I'm going to use the same example, except I'm going to change up the interest rate to match potentially a typical federal student loan rate. So let's say you borrowed $5,000 for your federal student loans. You have a 4% interest rate instead of a 17% interest rate. And let's say your minimum payment is $35. If we use that example, just swapping out the interest rate, it's going to take you 10 years to pay off that loan, and you're going to pay $817.56 in interest. That is just way more doable. That makes so much more sense to me. And that is the reason that if we compare the two high interest debt student federal loans, you definitely want to make sure that you pay every single dollar on your high interest debt before you even make any extra payments towards your student loans. So the next thing you want to ask yourself is, are you contributing to your 401k and or your Roth IRA? So the reason that this is going to be so important is because time is our very best friend when it comes to investing due to compound interest. I love compound interest. Like, I always go on the compound interest calculators just to see, how long it's going to take me to make $1 million. But seriously, compound interest is so great because basically when you invest your money, you get a percentage of return on that investment, and then you reinvest your returns, and then you get a percentage of return on not just your initial investment, but also the returns that you got previously. I hope that makes sense. Basically, your money continues to grow and grow and grow like crazy over the years. So you really need a good amount of time, I'm talking decades, to really see compound interest in effect. But at some point, your money just continues to grow like crazy. All right, let's come in with an example because, like I said, examples really help paint the scene that I'm trying to portray. So let's say you start investing when you're 22 and you invest $300 a month for 43 years because you plan to retire when you're 65, and you expect to get a 7% return on your investment, which is, again, pretty typical for the stock market. If you do that, you're going to have, wait for it, $891,995.39. That's not bad. Investing $300 a month and you're gonna be almost a millionaire in 43 years? I'm not mad at it at all. However, if you invest the same amount, but let's say you don't start when you're 22, you start when you're 32, and you didn't change the amount that you invested or anything like that. However, you invested 10 years later, you're going to have $428,160.33. Now that's not bad. No one's mad at that. Nothing to sneeze at. However, just by waiting 10 years to invest, you're going to have less than half of what you would have had you started 10 years prior. Now, if you want to catch up to what you would have had you invested 10 years earlier, then you're going to have to invest $625 a month so that you can catch up to that $891,000 number by the age of 65. So when you think about this in relation to your student loans, should I invest first? Should I pay off my student loans first? You definitely want to invest first. Firstly, time is your best friend when it comes to investing. The earlier you invest, the more often you invest, the more time your money has to grow. And not only that, paying your student loans off, yes, you'll be debt free, but you'll also have to invest more to catch up to where you would have been had you invested earlier. So if you've ever heard the saying, the best time to invest was 10 years ago, the next best time to invest is now, that's just all to say is now is the time to invest. The next thing you want to ask yourself is, are you saving for the down payment of a home? Personally, I think a home is an amazing investment, and I am all for building wealth through home ownership. I think that if you have done your research, if you feel ready to do so, I would definitely prioritize saving for the down payment or saving for the expenses that are related to a home. Now, every situation is different, and you really do have to do your own research and try to figure out if you are ready for a home. But honestly, this is something that I wish I would have done. I wish I would have bought a home from the jump. Now, the reason that I love the idea of home ownership so much and having it as an investment is because I learned about this thing called house hacking, which, did y'all know about house hacking? It's crazy. So basically, you buy a home and you rent out the other rooms of the home, or you buy a multi-family home and you rent out the other apartments within the home, and basically your tenants pay your rent and you live rent free. What? So the rent that you charge your tenants should cover your mortgage or very close to it, so you end up living rent free. I love that. Can't wait to do it. So imagine a world where you didn't have your biggest expense, which is rent. Then you'll have all this money kind of, just there stacking, and if you wanted to, you could double up on your student loan payments and pay them even quicker than you would have. And not only that, you have a house that someone else is paying for. It's genius. So when we think about buying a home or paying your student debt off early, I definitely say buying a home wins, especially if you choose to house hack. You basically are eliminating your biggest expense, and then more of your money can be funneled towards your student loans if that's what you choose to do. Not only that, if you decide to buy a house earlier, you give yourself more time for your house to appreciate in value. It's a win-win situation. So based off of your answers to the above questions, you can really determine if you should pay off your student debt early based off of your specific circumstances. As someone who is paying their debt early, I definitely understand being eager to get out of debt. You see your parents struggle with debt, you see your family, your friends struggle with debt, and it just seems like a never-ending cycle, and we are trying to break those cycles. So I completely understand not wanting to have any debt. Also, I do understand the mental ease that comes along with being debt-free. It's kind of like a weight is lifted off of your shoulder. So I understand wanting to get to that feeling. However, if you choose to not pay your student debt early, rest assured that there are other ways that you can be fully setting yourself up for financial success outside of being student debt free. If you are prioritizing anything that I mentioned before, don't feel bad about not paying your student debt off early. You are making the right moves in the right direction, taking the right steps to really set yourself up. With that said, comment below. Let me know if you're going to pay your student debt off early. If not, let me know what you're prioritizing instead.